Hey, we're with the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch, and we are going to be joined here by Jane Cooper, our past president, and excited to share her work as well as her story and journey around dyslexia and how she got involved with Oregon IDA. Hello,
Hi there, Jared.
how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well.
Nice.
And can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Fabulous. Excellent. I'm just working out how best to kind of set this all up.
You're perfect.
Marvelous. There we go. Oh, let's put it up straight there. Oh, let's put something behind here so it's set straight. There we go. Excellent. Yeah.
Thanks so much for taking the time tonight to talk with us.
It is my pleasure. Absolutely. Yes.
I don't know if you remember, but I think one of the first time I met you was in a coffee shop.
Oh, yes. I remember that well. Goodness me, Jared. It seems forever ago, but just like yesterday.
It was, I think I was just getting started training for the World Marathon Challenge and had connected with the International Dyslexia Association, and we were going to do this as a fundraiser. And
Yes. Oh my God. I'll never forget. As president at the time of IDA Oregon branch, I got this email saying, there's this guy who's going to run 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents, and he wants to do it to raise funds for IDA National, and he lives in Portland. Would you meet him? And I was like, yes, of course I'll do that. And that set off quite
yeah.
a story, right?
Didn't it? But I think one of the things that came away from that meeting that really hit me hard was something you said, and that was reading is a human right.
Yep.
And I had not heard that before. That was like the first time like somebody had told me that. And I just want to know like where that came from and how that was developed. And I think maybe sharing that with some of the viewers because I think it's such an important concept.
Yeah. You know, Jared, gosh, that question just sparks, well, why am I a teacher?
Right?
And I can tell you that right from elementary school, playing games, being a teacher. I really enjoyed school, and I was grateful for some wonderful teachers in my life. Wanted to teach as a high schooler, qualified as a teacher, and as a teacher in the classroom, met a student who struggled with reading. And there was a wonderful woman by the name of Nell who stood by me, helped me as a beginner teacher, and helped Nicholas to read. And I remember at that stage being absolutely overwhelmed as a beginner teacher. It's like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, I'm responsible for all these little kids in grade 2, and I've got to teach them so much, and they're not all the same. They don't all learn the same. And Nell was there to help me, to help Nicholas to learn to read. And I said, like, I want to be a Nell. That's what I want to do. So that was 30 years ago. It's a shock, but yes, that's where the journey started.
Where were you teaching at the time?
I was in South Africa, in
Okay.
Cape Town,
Okay.
a little school in Claremont in Cape Town, and I had a little class of grade 2 students who I still remember fondly. But it was at that stage that I realized that literacy is something that A, needs to be taught, B, it needs to be taught well and correctly. And when a student learns to read, you set them free. That is their ticket to independence and
I,
independent
I
learning.
I think that's such an important point. And for the viewers, when you say it needs to be specifically taught, for those that don't know, can you give a general concept of what that looks like or what that actually means?
Well, Jared, gosh, how do you fit the science of reading into a sentence?
Right.
And I suppose the way I would say that is that reading just doesn't happen like you learn to talk. You just learn to talk. All of a sudden, a child is talking where they weren't before. But specifically, a child needs to be taught to learn to read. And that is not by giving them good books or reading them to them a lot. It's all about how language works, what it sounds like, how you map those sounds onto this strange alphabet, these squiggles on paper. And there is a lot that goes into that, right? And
Sure.
so we could spend a whole session talking about that. And I encourage anybody who's listening who wants to find out about the science of reading to go to our IDA Oregon branch website to go in and begin their journey to find out about that. But yeah, that is where it all starts. And reading is about how words work. And when you teach a child how a word works, how language works, it opens up the absolute joy of reading, and it opens up the ability to decode any word, not a word that you've just been you see a lot and you know the shape of. You can be a detective and you can work out, I know. One of my students said, you know what, with what you've taught me, I can look at a word, and if I don't know it, there's a chance I will, because you've taught me how to decode that word.
And
So yeah.
that is a question I had, is if you could talk about the experience, because like you're now this person that's bringing people into the light of reading. And what have you noticed from because we talk about self-esteem and confidence that comes with it and comes in the learning environment. Can you describe like when you've seen, like when you've taken on a student who's been challenged and then give them this gift, what that transition looks like?
I can, but I'd like to just go back to where you asked me about reading as a human right. And that we all look, and I think that pretty much everybody will agree that education, the right to education, is a human right. And UNESCO is one of the United Nations has literacy as one of its goals. And they talk about literacy as being something that is implicit to education. And so as we look at education being a right, if we don't teach children to read, they will not be independent learners, and they will not be able to access education. And so literacy being intrinsic to education, literacy also has a multiplier effect, as I've seen it expressed, that it goes to improve health. It goes to improve a person's ability to have an income, in their general relationship with their world and their self-esteem. So, yeah, teachers are all about the human right of education, but early educators, kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, that is my passion, the area of passion. Wow, that is, as Louisa Moat says, is rocket science. teaching a child to read and thereby giving them the independence to learn to read. Absolutely. And, to the second part of your question, what do I notice when students come to me? Like Nicholas, he couldn't read. He used to sit with a book in front of him and he'd say, "Don't help me, don't help me." He was passionate. He wanted to do this himself. And I do not know of a student that I've ever met who sits back and does not want to learn to read. They are inquisitive. Kids are just innately curious and they want to know, and they come to school excited. And when you come to school excited and you're going to learn to read, and then all of a sudden you find your friends around you are learning to read, but gosh, I can't. So comes on this, oh my gosh, I'm less than. There's something wrong with me. Why can't I do this? I'm not smart. And that breaks my heart. And that's why I wanted to be in L. I wanted to get in there. I wanted to no, you've got what it takes, and I can teach you. I can hold you. I can give you those skills, and you can learn to read. And when dyslexia comes into the mix, that's when it's really hard, because then acquiring those skills are even more difficult. And it's not about the child who can't learn it. It's the teacher who needs to teach in the correct way so that each child can learn to read. Because as I said in my little bio for this, great minds don't think alike. And no students are going to learn in the same way or at the same pace. And so it's a skilled teacher that is going to be able to help students to read. And my goodness, I have seen students just grow in confidence and grow to embrace the way they learn. One of my students, a very special student, said to her mom once about dyslexia. She said, "Mom, I think my teachers have underestimated me."
Wow.
Right? I wonder if you experienced that.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I feel like you have this energy, right? This passion as a young person to want to learn. You're not going into school dreading it right away, but it's
No.
you get stifled and you get limited, or you feel benched or sidelined. And then that's when you start to think, well, I'm slow, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, which we know is not the case with these students. Have high IQs. They're completely capable of intelligence and doing great things, but we got to cultivate it.
Yes.
And you say something in your bio that it takes a village.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you could maybe expand on that as well.
Well, it takes a village to do most things. And it takes a village to be a teacher and to raise a reader, to educate a child. And when a student has a learning difference, it's, I always say, trust the instinct of a mom or dad. And often it's a mom, because they're the first ones who will notice something just isn't right. And I cannot tell you, well, in fact, there is not one instance of me dealing with a child where it hasn't been the mom who has told the story that there was just something that wasn't right. And I knew it. And then the mom just starts getting involved and trying to help their child, right? And working out now what's going on. And they go to the teacher, the preschool teacher, the speech therapist, that everybody kind of mobilizes. And when that village doesn't understand how reading works, and they don't know about dyslexia and the characteristics of dyslexia, that child is at sea. And that parent, who might not be an educator, is like, I don't know what to do. And so begins that journey. And it's often the family that has to bring together all those individuals that help to make sure that that child gets what they need in order to be successful. And I think, Jared, your story and your parents are much the same way, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I mean, my mom was amazing. Both my parents were amazing to have and recognize that, and they jumped on it right away. What I wanted to ask you though, and I'm so grateful for that. What I wanted to ask you though is for the parents that aren't, like my mom was an educator, so she got it. But for the parents that aren't educators, what advice would you have for them in order to kind of go about this investigation? Like what can they do for the parents on the line that are like, I'm not an educator, but I have this hunch that something is going on with my kid.
Okay. So I first, be that mama bear, number one, and trust your instinct. Number two, be that squeaky wheel, because your child is worth it. Don't give up. On all these interviews that you ever have, the one thing that overwhelms me is don't give up, and just be that squeaky wheel for your child, but then find out. Trust that instinct, and you need to go and find out what to do next and where to look. And I think what is just quite remarkable these days, Jared, is even as recently as when we met, and that's 4 or 5 years ago now, dyslexia and reading here in Oregon was not something that people spoke about openly.
Totally.
In fact, most of my students, their parents would say when I mentioned the word dyslexia, and even last week, I had a parent whose child went to a psychologist for an assessment in one of our local school districts. And they said, we don't use the word dyslexia. We don't call it dyslexia. We call it a specific learning disability. And I was like, oh, you know, parents need to know. Parents need to become armed with information. And what is so great is that there are groups, there are community organizations, there's a lot of information on the web. And with IDA Oregon branch, there's an information line. And people can ask, if you're just wondering, could it be that my child has a reading difficulty? Investigate it, because the worst that can happen is you find, no, it's something else or whatever. But the best outcome is that your child gets the help that they need.
Well, and I think that's an important point. And as we have single parents on the line, we have a number of situations, family situations that are just difficult. And I think let Oregon branch be that community. Let us be the village to help answer these questions and to guide, reach out to us at the branch, at the website, send us an email, and let's create that village, right? Like we all need it. We all need support with everything that's going on and online learning and all the things. So I think that's just an important message.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think where it comes, where we were talking about a human right in reading, I think what we are noticing here in Oregon is that in the most wonderful developed country, well, in a country where there is so much we know better, in our very city, there are students who are not learning to read. And access to education and to good literacy instruction is an equity issue that we are learning about, and that we cannot make excuses of ignoring. And I am absolutely impassioned by the fact that we need to be, as educators and as community groups, we must be addressing literacy for everyone. Yeah, IDA is our tagline is until everyone can read, but that involves hard work. That involves commitment. It involves a lot of money in training and in commitment, and that village of coming together and saying, gosh, maybe we have been doing things the wrong way. We need to be listening to the experts. We need to be training our teachers, because there's not a teacher that I have met who doesn't want the best for their children. But they need to be part of that village. They can't do it on their own. And we must get beside each other to help our students.
I love that. Well, as we as we're wrapping up, I want to give you the last word. What would you like the world to know about, whether it's education or dyslexia? I want you to be able to kind of share your thoughts.
Jared, ever since you asked me to do this, well, first of all, before we wrap up, I just want to say what an honor it has been to do this journey with you. I would love to point anybody who listens to this to your book, to the Running the Distance book, to read about your story, and to know that they have an advocate in their corner. I remember talking to you and saying, gosh, Jared, you're a hero to many. And you said to me, no, please don't use that word. I want to be known as an advocate. I want to get by people. And it was an honor to write the foreword to your book. That picture of us at the finish line, I remember you crossing that line and just being like, man, this is what it's like. This is what it's like to have a learning difference, but to get to the other side and to know that you can be successful. And so I think your story, all of our ability to tell the story about success, about being together, is just so important. So your book's an audio.
Yes.
So yes, I'm so excited. Go to the IDA website and find it and share it with whoever needs to listen. But to wrap up, what is my
hang
message?
on. Yeah, I'll give you a second to think about it, because I just want to say how grateful I am for you and all the work that you've done and the leadership that you provided this community and myself. I feel like you're the constant teacher. I learned so much from you, and just even tonight, hearing you and hearing what your passion for education and your passion for students across all the lines, it's huge, and just so grateful for you as well.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jared. Being involved with IDA has opened my world to the most amazing people all over the world, because the IDA is an international organization, and literacy is something that touches everybody's lives. And difficulty with literacy is it doesn't respect languages or borders, income, anything. It is our common experience. And so being involved with all these amazing people has been a gift to me. And I always quote Margaret Mead. This is attributed to her, I always say, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And I suppose I would like to leave as my parting statement. Whenever I listen to a student, they say, it takes grit, never give up, you can do it. When we listen to Danielle, our current president, she said, be open. And so I just want to say, get involved. Have the courage to get involved. If you're a parent, if you're a teacher, get involved. Say yes to the challenge. If you're a student, if you do have a learning difference, if you do find reading difficult, be brave enough. Be brave. Ask for help. Get involved. Because wherever you are in that spectrum, in that group, you are not alone. And this is what it's all about: telling our stories, encouraging one another, and becoming better, and making a difference. So, yep, that's how I'd like to finish up.
So powerful, Jane. And just so you know, people on the line are saying we need more Janes in the world. So you're just so appreciated on so many levels. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for taking the time tonight to talk with us, and just all your work. It's truly inspiring.
It's an honor, Jared, and thank you.
All right. You have a good night, Jane. Thank you so much.
Good night.